Oh, I know heartbreak. I know all about putting your blood, sweat, and tears into something and then them saying, nah, I won't want to see it. Or I've been on shows that have been flops. So it's like, I understand, like, it doesn't break you. And so sometimes I'll walk into a situation and not be as excited about it as I should be, because I'm like, well, I know all the different ways it can play out. But I love watching her excitement, because then it makes me be like, oh yeah, I can get excited again too. And it's okay. It's beautiful. It fuels the work.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Dorian Missick is an actor. I sat down with him on the Upper West Side of Manhattan to talk about the work.
You land the part. You're alone with the script. Do you have a typical first step that you take?
Yes. I read it. But I mean, I read it not like in a way of how do I play this character. I literally just read it to know the story and say, is this something that I would care to watch, listen to, see? Do I care about these people? And I just read it like that. So that's the first thing I do. Then I go back and think about it from the perspective of what the character is, who the character is I'm playing. Then I go back and try to find like little jewels, because now that I know what the story is, you try to find things that help you maybe get into the character. Then I go back and find out what people are saying. You do all that.
And every time you say I go back, it's another read.
Another read. Yeah. If I have enough time, I try to read at least. If I have enough time before we start, I try to get 100 reads in before I start.
100?
Before I start, if I can. Yeah, which usually means reading it twice a day until we start. That's like the best case scenario. You don't oftentimes get that, and then if you don't get it, I still try to get my 100 in by maybe reading at night when I'm shooting.
Wow. And you're not even talking about just your stuff. You're talking about the whole
story. Yeah. So it makes sense to me, because when I was a kid and I used to watch movies, I used to watch them over and over and over and over and over and over again. And when you watch like Howard the Duck like 100 times, you start to notice the mistakes. You realize, oh, this is going to lead to this. You find jewels. It's the same way when you read. Yeah. Things start to come off the page that didn't come off the page the first time you read it. Yeah. And it might be helpful to you. Sometimes it's not. It depends. It depends.
And it's got to help also with just your stuff. You start to internalize the dialogue then, probably.
That too. That helps in TV. Because if you're going super fast, then if you've read it a bunch of times, you still have to memorize it, but it's a little easier to kind of find it in your body when you've read it. Because that's another thing that happens when you're a kid and you watch movies 100 times. You know all the dialogue. Mm-hmm. You know when the phone's gonna ring. You know everything. Mm-hmm.
What do you need to feel like you're ready?
Start date. That's it.
That's it.
Tell me when we start. That's what I need. Otherwise, I'll go on forever. If you leave it up to me to start, we won't start. So it's better for you just to say, look, this is when you start, and then the pressure's on, and I'll work to that day.
And do you feel sometimes you're not ready, but you have to be, or are you always ready?
Never. I don't ever feel ready. Never. Not once, never, ever. There's never been a time when I've ever felt like, okay, let's do this. Nope. And I'm almost scared to say this because I don't want anybody to hear it. But I don't ever feel that way. I'm always like, man, if I just had one more week. But I know in my heart of hearts, if I had one more week, I still wouldn't feel ready. I don't know what's going to happen sometimes. So it's tough for me to say that I'm ready. It's a weird statement. Because then you get on set and things are different, or you get on to rehearsal, forget it. No, I'm doing a play. I'm not ready until 3 days before we close. Then I got it. Then I really got it.
What is this idea that you were just saying you don't know what you're going to do? You can't tie things down. It seems like there's some actors that just can't work like that. They can't work where things are too tight. Is that the way you are?
It's the way I've kind of evolved to. Yeah. Early on in my career, everything was planned out. Especially when you're doing like 100 auditions a year, or however many you're doing a year. Audition process and work process is so different that at some point in an actor's career, you become kind of like a professional auditioner.
Yeah.
And that's a very different monster than acting, I think.
Yeah.
It's literally like you have to plan out every single beat, the look away, the entire everything, because it's just like it's your one shot to kind of prove that you can approach this character. And so then that when you become a professional auditioner and you're doing like 1 or 2 scenes in a project, and it's usually the scenes you've already auditioned with, it's so practiced by the time you shoot it. And then I thought, oh, that's the way you need to be prepared to work at all times. But it doesn't work when you have to carry something. That doesn't, it doesn't feel, you can't possibly plan out every single beat and expect people to be interested in watching that the whole way through. Absolutely not. You have to surprise yourself, and you can surprise people who are watching it. You know, they have to feel that way. Otherwise, it's just like, why am I watching this? Comedy might be a little different because it's a rhythm thing, but even then, it's like playing music. You know the beats, the breaks. I might hit this note a little harder. I might do this. You kind of know, but you can't have it. I can't have it planned out. I've seen actors who do it. Everybody's process is different. I've seen people do it, and it seems pretty good. I don't like to do a whole bunch of takes with people like that.
And why is that? Well, there's not room for you? Like, is that what that is?
Yeah. It's kind of like, I don't have to be here.
Yeah.
You know, I could kind of not be here and you'd still get what you need.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't work for me, but it might work for you. And I usually don't have much to say about it if it's not my thing. You know, if I'm just kind of coming in and helping you tell the story, then there's one thing. But if I'm like the guy who's telling the story, I'm not going to step on your toes, but I'll try my best to kind of like shake that process up, you know? And most people are appreciative of that.
Have you developed like a game plan for auditioning? Like this whole, like you're just saying, you become a professional auditioner. Your approach has to have evolved.
My current game plan for auditions, don't go. I would prefer to just take a meeting and talk about it because I don't know what I'm gonna do. So that's my game plan now. It doesn't always work that way. So then.
So what do you mean? Do you literally say no?
Yeah. No. Can I not do it? It doesn't work all the time. It does not work. Actually, it doesn't work most of the time.
Yeah.
At the stage that I'm in, but it's just at some point you have to just kind of like.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I don't audition because I still do.
Right.
But it's usually like, they're dragging me in.
Yeah. Because you have like 77 credits on IMDb. I mean, like, at a certain point you want to just say, guys, just go look at I've done something like this before.
Or not even that. It's just like, well, it's proven that I can do this job.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not the same thing that you're asking me to do on this, but I think at this point, that I'm capable of doing this job.
Yeah.
And so then if we want to talk about how I'm going to approach this job, that's one thing, and then if
that could be in a meeting,
right?
Yeah,
and see how, if we get along creatively, if we see this thing being carried out the same way, that's something different. But like, I feel like the idea of like coming in and can you act out this scene at this moment in this very false room kind of thing, I don't know what it proves after a while. In the beginning, I totally understand what it proves. I have no idea what you can do. I've never seen you. I don't know. But once you do, it's kind of like, what is the point of this?
Yeah.
Really? And then you find out, the director wanted to just kind of direct you in the room, which is fine. I don't mind doing like that, like a work session or something like that. But it's just the idea of like, come in, get in front of the camera. And just say these words that you can say.
Yeah.
And then you're in the room, you're looking, or you might come out and you see other actors, you're like, oh, these guys are great.
Yeah.
Like, why are we doing this, guys?
Yeah.
All of you are good.
And you know all of them.
Right. Yeah. Like, you're all wonderful actors. Why are we here doing this? This is a process that people are comfortable with that doesn't always make sense.
Yeah. Right.
So I try to skip it.
And you probably know all these casting people too.
Right.
Or a lot of them.
Yeah.
That's the other part.
A lot of them. Most of them.
That makes no sense.
Yeah. And even the newer ones, you're like, oh, they used to work at this person's office, so you've had some kind of interaction with them a lot of times.
Yeah.
Look, I understand the game and the business and why they do it, why it has to happen. So, I'm not sitting on like a mountaintop saying like, listen, these things should not happen. I understand it. It's just not my favorite thing.
Yeah.
It's my least favorite thing at this point.
When your wife was on, she told a story about you getting this role in 2 weeks' notice. But I want you to tell that story. She described it as your one of your big breaks.
Yeah, that was my introduction to the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then I'd done like 7 auditions for that. You know why? Because I'd never done anything else. Make total sense. Because it's like, this kid was good, but is he going to be good tomorrow? Can we bring him in? Can we put his foot to the fire? And can he still do it? And once they figure that out, then so I totally understood it. And I was going against a lot of big time comedians, and I didn't think it was something that was going to go completely my way.
And weren't they looking for like an overweight Italian?
Yeah,
man?
looking for a overweight Italian guy. Yeah, I found out later, and then
Oh,
they
you
actually
didn't know
had
that.
to.
You didn't know that during that time.
I didn't know at the time. I found out later, and then I also found out that they had to really convince Hugh Grant that people would understand me. Because Hugh Grant was like, I don't know half the time what he's saying. Will the audience understand him? And they were like, no, Hugh, fine. Look, trust me, they're gonna get it. I think Hugh told me that on set. He was like, I didn't think anybody would understand what you were saying. But yeah, it was a thing where I met Eileen Starger, I believe the casting director, and Janice Wilde was her assistant at the time, at a workshop. And I just came in and read a monologue or a scene or something. And she put my picture on her wall in her office and wrote on a sticky note, "Must find work."
Wow. Wait, pause 1 second. Because this is interesting. Because sometimes these workshop things, actors got to wonder, like, is this worth it ever? And usually it's not, right? I mean,
I don't know. I couldn't
getting
say.
in front of, so this is just like getting in front of agents.
Yeah, I spent some good money back in the day. Like, this is in the
casting
90s.
people.
Yeah, bought a package deal, a bunch of them. Spent my whole summer at Actors Connection was a specific place that I went to. I don't know if it's still around.
Yeah,
but,
it is. Yeah.
That was the place that I went. And I went I literally did a commercial, took some money from the commercial, bought a package, and would show up every day. Who's here? Can I get in this? If not, can I go on a wait list? And that's how I kind of met everybody.
Interesting.
And so this particular day, she was one of the people I met, and they were one of the people I met, 2 of the people I met. And they wrote my name on a sticky, put it on a picture, and said, "Must find him work."
Wow.
This came about. I had an agent who submitted me for like a day player role, because that's kind of like, what you would expect for a guy who's just done a little bit of theater and stuff. And because they knew me, they were like, "I think we should give him a crack at this role. I think it would be interesting." And I just went the whole way, because I just read it and I was like, "Oh, I know this guy. I know how to do this." And it just kept going.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, I got the job.
Wow.
Yeah.
And when you go back and you learn that it was written for an overweight Italian guy, were you like, "Oh wait, so now this makes sense in a different way"? Like these lines.
Not in that context, because that piece was, it's a big Hollywood romantic comedy. So you have your stock characters, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then you have the really fleshed out people are the leads.
Right.
Right. So the other guys we're there to kind of help the story keep going.
Yes.
In
a romantic comedy especially.
Yeah, particularly. It's almost Shakespearean in that way, where it's like you know what this guy is. And so, when I read it, I was like, oh yeah, I could totally see this guy being an Italian
I gotcha.
cab driver, like totally. But instead they got me.
Yeah.
I could see me doing it because I did do it. Right. I understood it. There was nothing in the dialogue that necessarily informed it one way or the other.
I see.
And so they were just incredibly smart to kind of start looking elsewhere. But it almost cost me the job, I think, because I think when they brought me in, the studio was like, well, okay, how about these other comedians? And I'm like literally sitting there with like Dave Chappelle and people who I don't think would have gotten in the room if I wasn't in the room.
Right.
Because they were like, oh, since we're thinking about going young and black, how about these popular young black dudes instead of this guy you got off the streets of Brooklyn?
Right.
And at that point, I was just like, man, if I don't get this, maybe I'll get something with 2 or 3 scenes where I can be funny. Like, I literally was just that desperate to work.
Right.
That the concept of catching that role was just, it would have been great, but I wasn't going to like jump off a bridge if I didn't get it. Like, I'm so deserving. Why didn't they pick me? There was a lot of reasons why I can understand me not getting picked for that.
Yeah.
So when I got it, I flipped out.
Yeah.
And was like, oh wow, maybe I have arrived.
But wait, let's go back for a second, because with you, I want to know this. Can you tell me when you first knew you wanted to devote your life to this?
Oh man, that's a good question. if I'm perfectly honest, it would be when I saw Soldier's Story, the movie. And my mother had seen the play. My mother is a big supporter of the arts. Like, she goes to see all plays, goes to museums. Like, that's just been my life. And so she'd seen the play. So she was a huge Denzel Washington fan because of the play. And then she was watching St. Elsewhere. So Denzel was a guy I'd known about in my household. And then we went to go see Soldier's Story. And here's this movie with all these black guys in it. It's a period piece. It's not about slavery. It's about soul. It was just like a story that I was like, wait a minute. They can tell stories like this, and the way the excitement to which that brought my mother to the theater to see Denzel Washington, I wanted to make someone excited like that. Like, she just was like, sight unseen, I'm watching this movie for this young guy, you know, and not so much because he was fine or whatever. I mean, ultimately I found out but as the young guy, I was like 7 years old at the time.
I was going to say, you must have been really young.
Yeah, I was 7. It was like 83 or something like that. Yeah, I was really young. So then I was like, well, I want to do that. You know, I was able to make my family members laugh and stuff. So I was like, maybe I want to be a comedian. And then I was playing records all the time. So I was like, maybe I won't be a DJ. Maybe I'll just do this. It was like one of the two. Or maybe I can do both. Be a DJ who tells jokes. I don't know, but but that was like the moment when I was like, I want to do this. I didn't start until maybe a couple of years later, but that was the definite seed. Yeah, where I was like, this can happen.
And then when you were young, you got to roll on it In the Heat of the Night, the TV show.
Right.
But then, so that was just in your teens.
Right.
What you decided to go to school? That's when you really got. You're like, I'm going to do this in a serious way. I'm going to learn this. It's not just like I'm gonna try and do this like an actor. I'm gonna study this.
Yeah, I mean, because the thing is, I was a child actor, but not a child star, and so many of my friends became child stars. And like so many, pretty much like my whole circle at the time, they managed to get some kind of sitcom or something and became a big star. And because I was kind of casual about it, like I didn't want to fly to California to do screen tests and things like that, but that wasn't, if it got in the way of like soccer season, it pretty much, like acting shut down for soccer season when I was a kid. Like, I don't care what the only thing that got me to show up was the Cosby Show because I was such a big fan, and I never was on it. So that was the only thing that could have gotten me to an audition during soccer season. So my other friends who were more serious about it, and whose parents were more serious about it, they didn't take breaks. And if somebody called and said fly to LA, they were going. I wasn't going to LA. I'd seen the movie Colors. I wasn't trying to get killed. I thought all of California was like the movie Colors. You were never getting me out there. It was never gonna happen. Yeah. So I think because of that, I kind of was able to kind of slowly get into it. Like I would do commercials in spurts. Yeah. You know, like you said, I did like, you know, a guest star here and there in spurts. Yeah. But it was like always kind of a hobby thing. Yeah. And then I realized I really loved it. You know, we moved to Atlanta in my teens, and I went to a performing arts high school there, the DeKalb Center for the Arts. And when I was there is when I really realized, oh, this is my tribe. The other students and things, like I hadn't really found a place. Not that I didn't fit in, you know, because I make friends everywhere, but that's when I was like, this is where I feel most creative, and this is what I want to do. And so then I started to really hone in on it and get super serious about it, you know.
And that might have been better that you weren't forced or pushed to really go at it without breaks, you know, because it kind of developed the passion for it on your own.
It's my own love. Right, it was. And the thing is, I was always kind of a self-starter in that. Like when I told my mother I was interested in it, and I bought a Backstage magazine from a newsstand, and then we had to subscribe to it, and then I would read it every week and circle the things that I thought I was right for, make the phone calls. It was something that I totally did on my own. And because I was a self-starter in that way, that's how I met my agent. Like all of that stuff was because I was sending out headshots and things like that at a young age. Wow. It just kind of just felt, I was able to kind of take control over it and it be my own love. I had to tell my mother if I had an audition. And then when things started getting kind of busy for me, we had like a nanny who would come with me and sit on set with me and go with me to auditions and take me out of school and that kind of thing, because my mother wasn't gonna quit her job in hopes of her son becoming a star. That just wasn't something we did.
Yeah. And it's probably better for you also that your mother wasn't over your shoulder like these parents are with these kid actors.
The greatest blessing to my whole entire career has been my mother. No question about that. Her support is, and the older I get, the more I realize how important that was. She was just like, listen, from the time I was a young guy, like, you can do whatever you want to do. Like, there's no pressure, but if you're going to do it, I believe you can do it. And I believe you're going to be great at it. And when times were really hard as an actor for me, you know, when you're living off of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and you got, you know, the million roommates kind of situation, she supported me. She realized, she came up with a system. She was like, listen, you call me every other week for little bits of money, $25 here, $50. I did the math. It usually averages out to about $200 a month that I'm giving you with these little phone calls. Mm-hmm. So at the beginning of every month, I'm gonna give you $200. You do with that what you need to do. You fill in the holes in your budget that way. And I'm gonna do it for a year. After that year, we'll reevaluate whether this is something that makes sense or whether you need to do something else. Because I had stopped going to school at this point and was really like full-time acting. And so she was like, you might have to, you know, go to somebody's school and think about this. And literally it was a year to the date of, like, literally when my checks were gonna run out. It was in April of 97, I think, 98, April of 98. And I'd gotten a Burger King commercial, and the first residual check came in the day of what would have been the year anniversary. And that's when I realized, oh man, God's got me. This is like God's way of telling me, like, keep moving. Just keep moving forward. We're gonna figure this thing out. And ever since that day, I've been a working actor. And ever since that day, I've been happy at this. And not that I wasn't happy before, and you have your sad days, but ever since that day, I was like, yo, this is what I'm supposed to do. I don't know where it's gonna take me, but I know it's what I'm supposed to do. Never had to borrow another dime from my mother. Never, not once, or anyone.
Wow.
And I never looked back.
When I saw Brian Banks, the movie over the summer, and I saw you in it, first of all, I didn't recognize you in it, even though I knew about you. And I swear to God, man, I was thinking, all right, I got to find out who this guy is because he's real. And then at the end, I'm like, what? I don't know why I didn't recognize you. Like, since your wife was on, I've been keeping an eye out. You know, I don't know why.
That's wild. That's a compliment.
Yeah, I really, really did. And later on, I was thinking, you don't seem like the kind of actor that needs a heavy-handed direction. Tell me if I'm wrong, and tell me what kind of director works best for you.
It depends on the piece, but I like directors who have like a very clear idea of what they want. And so in that way, if you are a heavy-handed director and you're like going for like a super specific tone, if I'm following your system, I'm with it. You know, I'm into it. I like kind of doing things differently if asked to do it. You know, so it just kind of depends. But the biggest thing is you just have to be prepared and clear. That's what I want, clarity. So if we're clear that we both have a clear understanding on where this character is going, then I might not need much direction from you, and that's fine. I don't mind that. I'm not needy in that way. You know, if I just get behind it and keep it moving. But if you are somebody who has no earthly idea, and I just feel like I'm just out here flailing in the water, I don't like those kind of directors. Yeah. And I tend to eat them up. And it's not always good. My wife, I'll come home from work and she'll be like, why did you say that? And I was like, I didn't even realize it was like a bad thing to say. I just didn't realize it. She was like, you can't do that to people. I was like, I didn't do anything, but I realized it's just, I get very upset because I'm like, this is such a great opportunity to do what we want to do. Yeah. And so many people want to be in your position to show up unprepared. Yeah. And then, or like with an ego that is like unwarranted and not doing your job. It drives me nuts. Yeah. And then the bully comes out, you know, and I have to put him back in the cage.
No, does this happen a lot? I mean, or is it rare?
Nah, it's rare. It's rare, thank God. The further along I've kind of gotten in my career, and like, you know, the one thing that I think has kind of kept me around, the caliber work that I enjoy doing, the directors and producers who enjoy doing that caliber work watch it, and they find me, and so you end up working with a group of people who are prepared in a certain way, who, you know, it's that kind of thing. But in the early stages, when you're just kind of just showing up, you don't know what you're gonna get. You know, you can be doing an episode like we were talking about Law and Order, and the director is just really just the nephew of the executive producer, and he like had a Super 8 camera and shot ants in the backyard. Now he's over this whole thing.
I'm sure that has happened on Law and Order. I mean, Law and Order. There's so many people. I know some people that directed Law and Orders that never directed anything else.
I mean, how can they keep that thing going? They have to. They do 1 million episodes a day.
Yeah,
that's a great way to break into the industry. You know, so you got to start somewhere. But it's just like the idea of that, you know, showing up with someone like that, and who, it's one thing if you show up and you say, listen, man, the last thing I directed was a bunch of ants running around in my backyard underneath the magnifying glass. So,
pardon me.
Yeah, you know, we're gonna be going through this thing together.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, right.
Cool, because like I said, you got to start somewhere. But I hate when you're that guy. The last thing you did was ants, and you come in acting like, you know, you're Spike Lee or somebody. That really drives me crazy, and it's counterproductive to the process.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Because a great director can come from anywhere. You know, you just have a passion for the story and a clear vision. You know.
Yeah.
It can come from anywhere, but you have that. Those things are key.
What is your biggest pet peeve on a set?
Do you have something that keeps happening that bothers you?
The only thing that bothers me is because I think it's such a privilege to do what we do. It's when people just take it lightly, and not even just lightly, like you don't have to show up to work serious, but like when people just like aren't prepared. They think it's funny that they're not prepared.
You're talking about actors.
Actors, directors, and anybody who's there. You know, because you don't realize you're wasting so many people's time on set specifically. You're wasting a lot of people's time, man. You know, you got the crew members who, no matter how long actors are on set, the crew members are always there longer than us.
Yeah.
So no matter how, imagine how tired we are as actors. And then look at the gaffer. He's worked at least 6 hours more than you. You know?
Carrying stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
He gets there before you get there, and he leaves after you leave.
Yeah.
And their turnaround time is not the same. So when you start looking at it as a team sport, and you realize, like, man, you're letting the team down. But you just can't see the forest for the trees because you're so concerned with what you need and what you, that drives me up a wall. And the most professional and the best actors that I've ever worked with, and a lot of times the more famous actors, you know, Greg Kinnear is a great example of this. Those people, he's super prepared. Actors like that, Denzel Washington does not play games. You show up on Denzel's set and don't know your lines. Well, he'll let you know. This is not one of those places. You know, and so that's probably my biggest pet peeve is when people take it too lightly.
Yeah.
It's disrespectful.
I don't think it was on my show, but it was some other interview. Michael K. Williams mentioned you as a mentor.
Yeah, it's my brother.
What does that mean?
Well, Mike Williams is like I said, he's my brother. We found out that we might even be cousins. Like my mom and his mom and my grandmother we're both Bahamians, and they like grew up together or something. Yeah, so I was like, man, we might be cousins. But we've been acting. We've known each other since like literally the early 90s. You know, tooling around the city, going on auditions. We used to pad we learned, like I showed him how to write a resume from like a blueprint that I had. We like all got together with another good friend of ours, Al Thompson, who's also an actor, you know, knocking around the city. And we would go to Al's house and type up our resumes. And like, man, you think, okay, I had 2 lines on this show. Can I call it a guest star? You know, so we kind of co-mentored each other in that way. Yeah. And then when I got my first series, 6 Degrees, they wanted to bring on a guy to play my brother. We'd shot the pilot, and the guy played my brother in the pilot. And he was a great actor, wonderful actor. But the network felt like he had a lot of scary things to do, But this actor didn't come across as a guy who's maybe could do these things. And he was too sweet. And they were like, my character seemed scarier than him. And my character was a nice guy. So they wanted to bring in somebody with a little more edge. And so they're bringing in all these rappers to play my brother. And Mike's name came up. And, this is after The Wire. So he was gaining, it wasn't when The Wire became a crazy thing,
right.
but it was like during the period of time where people in the industry knew these guys on The Wire are incredible actors. And so they brought Mike in, and I remember him calling me, telling me he was coming in. And I was like, listen, man, I'm going down there and I'm going to read with you. Now we're there, and it's like Method Man and some other guys who I wouldn't have minded reading with. Method Man, I'm a huge fan. But I went in with Mike, and we read together, and that's what sealed the deal. And he ended up playing my brother on that show. And we've kind of like gone through a lot of life stuff together, just various different stages in life. And we've kind of been there for each other in that way, lots of transitions, man. This business can be kind of tough on people. And I think with Mike, we've been able to kind of like be each other's rock in certain times. And like we go for periods where we don't talk that much, and then we'll talk all the time. And so, yeah, I can understand him saying that because I would say the same. We mentored each other.
Nice.
Yeah, definitely. There are like few people. I've been in the business for a while. I know a lot of people, and I'm friendly with everyone. But there are few people you can call like your brothers, and he's clearly somebody like that.
Your wife is Simone Missick.
The incredible. The fine. She's fine. Ooh. I can say that. We can all say that. We all got eyes. Those of us who do.
She stars in All Rise on CBS. So you've been a working actor all these years. Your wife's been a working actor all these years. But I think every actor is kind of worried about work. I mean, I've talked to some people that you would never believe would be worried anymore. And they're worried about the next job.
Right.
To have two people in a household, just a little bit of that worry, is what do you guys do for each other to combat that worry or that anxiety?
I mean, the biggest connector between Simone and I from the first conversation we ever had on like our first date was about our faith in God. And what eliminates my concern or worry in anything is just my faith. And I talk about that moment in 1998 when it was like almost like the final nail in the coffin. When that happened, I was like, I don't have to complain or I don't have to worry about anything. I'm always going to be taken care of. It may be at the last minute. It may be an hour later than I anticipated. It might be a year later than I anticipated, but I'm always going to be taken care of. So the next job is not as big of a concern for me as it is for the average actor. And not because I think I'm so great I'm going to get it, but I just know God's got me. It's bigger than what I think, So I don't worry about it. And Simone comes from that same space. Now, it does not mean we are not both humans. And so there are those moments when you are stressing out. However, because we've been blessed that it doesn't happen to both of us at the same time. So when I start going into panic mode, she can remind me of what we're doing and why we're here, and vice versa. So we're each other's rock in that way. And we're both acting nerds, geeks. Like, we are the most annoying people to go to the movies with. I'll tell you that. I feel so badly for people who have to sit in the theater with us.
Wait, what does that mean? You guys are talking to each other during this thing?
We will talk. We might stop a film, talk about a scene, a choice that was made.
Oh, I want to be there. Can I be there one day?
Yeah, if you can handle it. I feel really bad for people sometimes because I used to feel kind of bad about that, but now she and I, we do it, and it's just our thing. Yeah. And so we're that way with each other's work. And so we kind of sharpen each other, iron sharpens iron, So we're able to kind of do that and support each other. And so, when we first met, she was like, doing commercials in theater and doing great. But I could see in her work, because I was out working, and I could see in her work that I was like, listen, you're doing exactly the things that the people who are out getting shows thrown on their back and movies, you're doing the same thing. Your approach to your work ethic and everything is just a matter of getting that yes. Yeah. And I think for her, from a worldly standpoint, she's like, well, here's somebody who's in the industry, who's been working. If there's anybody who knows, it would be him. Now, if we were both at the same stage, she'd just be like, what are you talking about? I'm pissing in the ocean and no one's paying attention. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But because of that, it was like God put me in her life for that reason to kind of, and then she was placed in my life to reinvigorate. One of the things is to reinvigorate my excitement about the journey. Because watching her go on this journey now is reminiscent of when I first got my first break. And then you get somewhat not jaded, but it's like, look, it's not new to me anymore. Like, you know, being invited to this party or being put on this list in this magazine, it's not as exciting because you realize, well, in the end, that didn't mean I got more jobs. So it's just kind of something that you do. But to watch her get excited about it and to watch her take these steps, it puts the battery in my back, you know, where I can go to work and feel like, oh, this is cool. You know, she's got a series. And, you know, her desire for it to be successful is sometimes comical to me, you know, because I'm like, babe, you got to relax. Like this, just do your work. You can't make no audience come see your show. Like, that's just how it is. This is me going in and having 13 pilots deep. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, oh, I know heartbreak. Yeah. I've done 13 pilots, and out of the 13, I think only like 4 have made it to air. So I know all about putting your blood, sweat, and tears into something and then them saying, nah, I won't want to see it. Or I've been on shows that have been flops. So it's like, I understand, like, it doesn't break you.
Right.
And so sometimes I'll walk into a situation and not be as excited about it as I should be because I'm like, well, you know, I know all the different ways it can play out. But I love watching her excitement because then it makes me be like, oh yeah, I can get excited again too. And it's okay. Yeah. It's beautiful. It fuels the work. You know, I'm doing a series now for ABC called For Life. And it's super gritty. It's something that me reading it, I'm like, it should be on cable. But we're on network television. So of course, your whole thought is, oh man, is this gonna work on network? Are they gonna? Right. I get a script every week. I get a new script, and I'm like, okay, is this the one that they're gonna dumb down for Middle America? Because they just, you know, network TV is so disrespectful towards Middle America, and it doesn't happen. And Simone was like, change your attitude, you know, change your prayer when you get that script, like. You know, just believe that you guys are going to be able to do the work you want to do, and it finds an audience and it's accepted, and not just accepted that it becomes a hit. Change your attitude. And I'm like, yeah, that's true, I should. And here we are, 7 episodes in, and I'm like, man, the writing just keeps getting better.
Wow.
Yeah, so, you know, in that way, we understand each other's journey. You know, like, she's shooting in LA, I'm shooting in New York, but we understand the schedules. You know, it's sad. I hate to say goodbye. I hate to, you know, I'm always on the plane now. I'm the guy who's always like, if I got 4 days off, I go to LA. But we understand it. You know, missed birthday parties and things like that. That's no longer an issue with us. Yeah. It's not an issue. It's never been an issue because we understand each other's lives. Yeah. You know, and we also know when it's like, look, we need to take a breather and go do something for us. Right. You know, and we have that freedom.
When you've auditioned for a room full of white people, did you feel like you had to kind of present a white-friendly blackness to them? And has that changed now? Like, I feel like we're in a new time, finally, like where some things are changing. But I don't know, like coming from where I am, I don't know if that's true. But does any of that make sense?
Makes total sense. And I think about it often. Yes. I never was the guy, and it cost me work, I'm sure, who felt like I needed to go in there and do what it was that would be white friendly. You know, I don't want to pick on Law and Order because I feel like we're picking on Law and Order, but I don't mean to. But like for example, I would go to like Law and Order auditions, and you know, look, man, yeah, I'm a young guy from Brooklyn. I know what these street characters look like, and you know, who they are, how they talk, and how they move. And I'm sitting in a lobby, and none of these guys are that. Not even close. You know, they're sitting there with cut-off jean shirts, and I'm like, you wouldn't last a day on Nostrand Ave. Like, what are you doing? But I know that they're doing what they feel the network needs to see.
Right.
You know, they got these Kango hats on backwards, and no way on my block wears those hats. What is going on?
Yeah.
You know, and you realize, well, they're pandering to an audience because they know that this is something that would be more realistic. But I feel like that played into stereotypes more.
Right.
Because you have these guys with these, you know, these who are nothing like the characters they're portraying in the way they portray the characters, and it just makes people scared of everyone.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed, it's interesting. But now that we have more Black content creators and directors and writers and people and you're seeing more realized characters and stories, and it's a beautiful time. It's an incredible time. I love it. Like I used to be very surprised by stuff. Like I would get a script and be like, wait a minute, they're gonna be all right with this. Like I know exactly how to approach this. And then there used to be a moment when you're like, I know how I would approach this and I know the right way to do this. However, I know the way in which they would want this to be, you know? And it would happen, like you would get a script and you read it and you're like, oh man, this is really good. You know, like I remember years ago, there was a movie, New Jersey Drive, and I got the script for New Jersey Drive and I was like, wow, this is cool. I know all of these guys. Like I know who these guys are inherently. I know who these are. And my agent at the time was like, oh, well, there's an offer out too. And it was like all these Nickelodeon kids. I'm like, they can't do this. What? Why would they do that? And then ultimately they did not. They made a movie that was gritty, and a lot of those guys weren't even actors until they did the movie. But that was something that was constantly happening. You know, Simone and I laughed really hard at when she did Luke Cage. Cheo is a good friend of mine. You know, we worked on Southland together. That's my boy, man. And he wanted me to do the first season of Luke Cage, but I'd signed on to do something else. And I came from Atlanta to visit Simone because I was shooting in Atlanta. She was shooting in New York. I came to visit her on set, and there was a scene in the first season of Luke Cage where these two kids are guns dealers, and they're negotiating how much the guns are going to cost and something. And I'm sitting behind the monitor. They give me the headphones. I'm looking at the screen, and it sounded like a scene from The Wire. I was like, these are real New York kids. These are not actors. I took my headset off. I was like, Cheo, they don't let you do this? Marvel is going to let you do this? It is a new world.
Right.
Because 10 years ago, those two kids, number one, wouldn't even be allowed in the audition. Like, just to be real. And number two, they would have been played by, like, you know, the more Disney. And I can say this because I was one of those kids, you know, like I was a kid who grew up in the industry, and I watched, you learn how to, you know, make nice with the camera. And that's oftentimes how these young actors are until they're given that place to breathe. And now there's so many actors that are like, I just don't feel like there was a space for them 10, 15 years ago, you know, and you watch them and you're just like, man, I'm so blown away by these actors and the opportunities that they're given, that's there for them to shine, you know, like I love watching it, you know, so many actors. Dominique Fishback is an actress I love because she reminds me of every girl that I knew growing up, and I would want to see those girls on screen at all the time. And I just know that in general, Hollywood has not been very open to them. But Dominique's having a great career, and she's gonna have an even greater career because David Simon opened a door for her, and now, you know, she was on the I think she started off on like The Deuce or something like that. But now she's doing great. You know, she's wonderful, and there's a space, and I watch these actors grow and do incredible work. You know, Donald Glover, and you're like, man, it's so beautiful that this opportunity is there, because I don't think that there was a space for these guys even, you know, 5 years ago, even 7 years ago. So that is something that invigorates me as an artist, because you know that your voice, the uniqueness of your voice, which I always push forward no matter what. And that meant that I didn't get a lot of jobs because I just wasn't gonna play the game. I'd rather tell the truth than play the game. And to tell you the truth, from a creative standpoint, that's better, because if your mission is to tell the truth and they want you to play the game, when you guys get together and start working together, you're not going to have a good working experience. So in the end, it's not even going to be worth it. So I'd rather just show you who I am and you show me who I am. And if we can get along, then we work well and we make music together.
I also believe that if you would have gone down that road of giving them something other than your truth, it not only would have messed up your whole thing inside yourself, it would have eventually like made you bitter about everything, you know?
Oh, no question. And the thing is this, with any art, what is the point in doing it if you can't do it from your own perspective?
Yes.
Is it even art? You know,
That's right.
is it even art then? If you're just imitating what someone else is doing, that's a thing. But
Yeah.
is it art? I don't know. You know, it's like, look, you give me this thing and I read this and this is how I interpret this character, my unique perspective. You have a unique perspective. This one has a unique perspective. And I think that part of what makes this thing so beautiful is that we're all able to kind of explore that. And if you're telling one group of people, well, we want you to explore it within the realms of what our imagination can come up with, then it's like, well, wait, that's not fair. I'm gonna take my ball and go home, man. I don't want to play that game. You know, I'm going to go over here where I'm allowed to flourish, you know, and that's what's happened. You know, so many people were doing theater and, you know, these guys were doing all of Terrell McCraney's plays and, you know, Dominique Morisseau's plays. And now all those people are big time movie writers and big time television writers. And guess what they're doing? They're bringing those actors who know how to speak that language to the screen and they're becoming humongous stars. Look at Brian Tyree Henry.
Yeah.
I've been watching Brian on stage for years and being like, man, this guy's great. I hope somebody gives him a break.
Yeah.
When people are told you can't play in this space, generally we go off and do things in another space and create something else. That's where hip hop came from. That's where jazz music came from. Yeah. It was like, oh, wait, instruments are too expensive. You're going to take the music programs out of school. We're going to make music here. And now everyone else is making the music that we created over here while you weren't paying attention. And I feel like that's kind of what's happening with the art now. It's like, oh, people are so blown away by Pose, and I'm blown away by it too. Like, listen, but it's like telling the stories, and it's like, where are all these wonderful actors coming from? And then you find out they've been in schools, they've been in theater, they've been all these places. We just weren't looking for them, you know. And so it's a beautiful time for people to have an opportunity to tell their stories, to be seen. One of the biggest things that ever happened to me, greatest like eureka moments, is I saw this film by Justin Lin called Better Luck Tomorrow. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I heard of it.
Independent film about Asian American students and kids. And
yes.
And it was just like this, all these actors I had never seen, except maybe one or two I had seen before, because I think one of the guys was like in one of them like American Pie movies or something. But everything else, all the other actors were brand new to me, and they were really great. Incredible, and it tells a story about the Asian kids and like what they do when they go home from school. And it was like I was blown away by all of this because I had friends, quote unquote friends, who I thought were my friends in school, Asian friends who were in my class, and I realized I didn't hang out with them. And because they were so good at school, I just assumed they went home, did their homework, and came back. And you realize that these kids had a whole life, and it was like a whole community of people. And I felt embarrassed that I didn't even know about it, but then I felt empowered because I was like, wow, it's like reading a book. You're going into a world that maybe you wouldn't go into. And then there's all these great artists doing things.
Yeah.
And that was like a small look into a world like that. And I feel like now as a whole, we're experiencing that.
Yes.
You know, and we're seeing all these things and there's all these great artists coming out. I mean, Billy Porter wins an Emmy and there's like the world is like, where has he been? Well, if you've been in New York going to the theater, Billy Porter is like God. So, you know, but it's just like, unless you're in New York and in Manhattan and have enough money to go to the theater, I've never heard of that guy.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because the world, the industry as a whole was not looking for him. You know? And so there are those moments where you feel a little frustrated, but then you're like, nah, this is beautiful because the thing is, people are always able to kind of create.
Yeah.
And just because it's not celebrated on a certain level, there's a world where all of those people are very important.
Right.
You know, like I said, you bring up Billy Porter's name and anybody in the theater gasps because we know what that is.
Yeah.
And now you have people who are like, I'm learning about this guy, Billy Porter. And, you know, it's beautiful. I'm not even upset about that. I think it's great. You know, I mean, I've seen it happen with music. You see it happen in all the arts. Yes. You know, Basquiat, like, you know, the streets knew about him before Andy Warhol did.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah,
But it was great when Andy Warhol got a hold of him.
Yeah.
You know?
And then now we all know.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't take anything away from his work. It's just as long as the work doesn't change as a result of trying to fit into a box. And I think when you create outside of the gaze of the mainstream, which is ultimately, you know, white America, outside of the gaze of white America, you can be creative. And then when someone comes to you, they have to accept it in the package that you brought it to them in.
Yeah.
You know, when people try to imitate hip hop, you know, when they were like, oh, this is what kids are doing. And then they try to make their own hip hop. It was like, no one's buying this. Mm-hmm. You know, look, man, you guys can listen to Rappin' Duke, who was like one of those, you know, made for TV kind of rappers. But I'm listening to Rakim because I know real rap.
Yeah.
You know, I know real hip hop. Yeah. And now the audience does, and they can discern.
Yes.
You know, so there's certain things that might have happened years ago on television that won't fly now.
Yeah.
Pre The Wire, there's certain things you just couldn't do.
Yeah.
Now that The Wire has happened, there's like, the world is clear on how the drug game is played.
Yeah.
We have a blueprint.
Right.
And it's on DVD and we watch it all the time.
What do you do when you're not working to feed your inner actor?
Live. And just live. I mean, there's so many things that get neglected when you're working. You know, go see your family. My family is great. I got a family full of characters. So if you're ever looking for the next person to play, just go to a family reunion and just listen to them tell stories. And then you walk away with a bunch of stuff. You know, if I ever did stand-up comedy, I would pull all of my material from my aunts and uncles and my cousins. But there's that. I'm a big documentary guy. That's like it's almost to a fault. Like if I'm up late at night, I'm usually on YouTube trying to find a documentary to watch when I should just be going to sleep because I have an early call time or something. But I'm so into that because it's just like, man, you know, it's just like a window into these worlds that you didn't know you cared about until you start paying attention to it. So there's that. And then I clean my palate a lot with music. Like that's really been my best, you know, my DJing is like definitely like a great way to kind of just forget the world. Like there's nothing better than I had a gig on Friday and just a couple days ago, just a day after the gig, one of the people who was there, they reached out to me on social media and was like, I had no idea that you were that actor in this and the third. They just only thought of me as a DJ. And I thought that was great. That's flattering to me. I'm not at all mad about that, you know? So because it's a different world, it's a different space, it's a different monster. Playing golf is really good for my acting. It is. Golf is a great thing for you because it's very similar. You're never going to conquer it. You're never going to be the best. Yeah. And every time you go out there, you have no idea really how it's going to go.
I love that. I love that analogy. You never had that yet. The golf analogy.
But yet you still do it. And you spend a lot of time doing it.
And you have one clear goal. Just put it in that hole.
Seriously. Yeah. How are you going to get there? Yeah. Right. And it's about that. And then my father-in-law put it even into bigger perspective. He was like, as you get older, your game changes because what one club that worked for you one time, you got to go up because you ain't as strong as you once were. But so you got to use a different tool to do the same thing.
Right. Oh, that's interesting.
It's like, that's true. And you watch these older actors who know how to preserve their energy between takes. You're like, is he asleep? And action. Oh man, let's go with energy. Man, I couldn't, I can't wait till I get to the age where I can learn how to conserve my energy like that.
But are you optimistic about this business?
Yes. Yeah. I think that's the only way I would be able to keep going. Sometimes I think it's blind optimism, but I guess that's really the only kind of optimism. Because if it was like some kind of way, if it was calculated, is it really optimism or is it you just, hedging your bets? So you have to walk into a room and be like, look, this is going to be the day. Every day you have to walk into feeling that. And the thing is, just from a spiritual perspective, that's what God tells us, is that everything, it's there. The path has been paved. It's just about us walking on it and accepting the blessings. But we get in our own way, thinking about things, doubting ourselves, trying to take control and moving in different ways. And that kind of can you put your foot on the hose and stop the water from coming through. But if you just kind of just walk through knowing, expecting the best, even when things don't go quite the best, and that happens a lot, especially in this business. There's something about having an optimistic view on how the whole thing is going to play out, that when something bad happens, it's not as big of a deal. Like being in a boxing match, you're going to get punched. It doesn't mean you're not going to win. You might even you might even like see some stars.
Might even get knocked down.
Maybe, but you just get up and keep fighting. And that's what you do, in hopes of, I might win this, even if it's by decision, And it's kind of like how I feel about the business, where it's just like, look, man, I'm learning something new. I don't have any tricks, so it's nothing that I'm leaning on that's going to get me the next job. It's like every job is something different. And that's exciting, that the people will retire because they get tired of doing what it is they're doing. I don't have to worry about that, because every time I do what I'm doing, I have the opportunity of it being different. So it keeps me optimistic,
Dorian Missick. Finally.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I love this show.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of IFP, the Independent Filmmaker Project. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.